and welcome to a new episode of our program Arab Affairs. And today we were supposed to start with the Arab Latin countries summit that took place in Riyadh. Important tragic incident that took place in France was the headline in the whole world. If we're speaking about this accident, then we have to say that once again terrorism that Egypt has been calling for a confrontation, a full confrontation, a world confrontation with it once and twice and many times, hits again. And this time it is hitting a very powerful European country, France, one of the most powerful Western countries. We're speaking about France, and we're speaking about France in its core, or France in its capital, Paris, and not just one destination, but rather three destinations. We're speaking about gunmen, bombers attacking restaurants, a concert hall, and a sports stadium inside Paris, in the core, inside a very powerful European country. Once again, terrorism is hitting the world, not just the Middle East, but the whole world. This is how we perceive the accident. Of course, all condolences to the French people and the families of the martyrs. Of course, the first thing that was made by Egypt was condolences message from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and all the Egyptian government and people to the French people. Yes, let me start by taking Mohammed Al-Alfi, journalist from Paris. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Mohammed Al-Alfi, can you tell us exactly the situation now in Paris, and how do French perceive what happened in the French capital? How do they perceive rather the threat of terrorism now?
Actually, what is happening last night? It was for the French people, not for France only, but around all Europe. But it's not easy to attack or to go to similar operations like that. Actually, in the normal situation, Paris is under control. Most of the European countries under control and high security. How come to find operations like that, especially outside the stadium and the president inside with high security, and of course, and the theater and the other one, it's huge against some people sitting in a cafe. Of course, the French president accused Daesh, and the Daesh said, yes, we do it in Paris.
Yes, indeed, Daesh claimed responsibility.
Yeah, that is not the main situation. We have to look or to provide a new or different viewpoints in this regard. Of course, to face or to execute operations like that inside Paris, that is mean you get intelligence support from another country, information and the logistic support from individual support. So I think the investigations will go very far in this regard to get a result.
Yes, Mohammed. Yes, just let me here ask you. Of course, France has taken severe measures, security measures and precautionary measures after these incidents. Mohammed, these are several bombings and bombers and attacks in several places all at one time, and we're speaking here about Paris. So how, from your point of view, or how is the police, the French police investigating how those bombs exploded and they were not detected by all the security systems in those several areas. What are the police saying about this?
Yes, actually, there is no official speeches given details. But from my view, these reasons I said this work is via intelligence agencies support, because it's not easy, as you said, to several places at one time in Paris. It's impossible. But yes, in the scene, Daesh in the scene. But the actual investigation, I think, will go very far in regard to get information which side supports this operation inside Paris. And even President Hollande said, I know there is a plan or support from outside and individual support, whatever the side or the people announce the responsibility of the operation.
Yes, Mohammed Al-Alfi, journalist from Paris, we thank you very much for joining us. Let me welcome our guest, Mr. Mohammed Al-Khouli, political analyst and international media expert. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And if we refer to this incident that happened yesterday, and we're speaking about 128 people killed, that is beside all others injured, and we're speaking about 3 incidents taking place in public places where security systems should be at its utmost alert. How did you view such attacks?
First of all, I felt since last evening until now that it's not only the politicians or the people in the administration in Egypt, or even the analysts and like, it's the masses, the ordinary people in Cairo and in Egypt. They feel it. They feel that another people, that's the people in France, had the same thing. They are facing the scourge of what we call terrorism.
Yes.
And this proves Mr. Sisi's call, which he always reiterates whenever he goes here and there. And his last trip in Great Britain, you see, he is calling for a kind of a global collective effort to combat terrorism. And this proves that terrorism is not a country thing, it is not a regional thing. It is a global threat which threatens not only some people here or some people there, or even some economic interest. It threatens the whole civilization. I'm not just talking hyperbole or exaggeration. When you attack people, ordinary people, civilians in Paris who are enjoying a concert, you see, or enjoying a football match, it is the same thing. As far as you do it in Syria, for example, and you are attacking a monumental ancient city which is called Palmyra, and you are breaking out all the statues which are the relics of a civilization in the past. This thing, let alone killing people and beheading human beings and all these things. And the dangerous thing is that this is committed under the banners of religion, and that is the threat against civilization, against religions, and against humanity. That's why we say that this is a lesson to be learned, that all the people, especially in Europe, in Western Europe, they thought themselves immune against all these things. But now, I'm sorry to say that humanity had to pay the price, and the price is these people, the civilians who fell victims for these terrorist acts.
Yes, but we are here speaking about the land of the human rights. We are speaking about France, the land of liberties, the land of economy, the land of everything. We're speaking about a country that used to promote for liberties, for the human rights, for everything.
Yes. Now it should be the land of security. the land of stability, the land in which people are safe, just safe. Then after you feel safe and after the society feels stable, well, you can go ahead and create and do this thing and do the other thing. The same, it came to the roots of our existence as human being. In the same time, what I noticed through this thing, which happened yesterday, is the terrorists are coming to be much more sophisticated
and brutal. Well, brutal, because if we can speak about systematical slaughter of 87 young people
in
a concert.
Boko Haram, for example, in Nigeria, are so brutal, but they do their work in forests, in remote villages, in things, in places which are very far from civilization. But now you came to the center, the heart of our modern civilization, which is called Paris. In Paris itself, look at the casting. How did they distribute the roles of people who did this thing, who committed these crimes? Look at the synchronization, the plan of synchronization. Look at the efficiency. It is very vicious efficiency, but it is efficiency. That's why we have to think it over. That's why we have to go ahead and, first of all, we have to share. We as people, I mean the people in the world, governments, administrations, and the concerned people, we have to share intelligence, information beforehand. Don't conceal what you know from me, because you and me, I mean Egyptians and Arabs and the Western Europe are partners in this thing, and we will be the victims, the common victims of this scourge of terrorism.
Yes, if I may ask about also measures that can be collectively made, not just now we're speaking about France, we're speaking about worldwide. What kind of measures can the whole world right now take in order to confront any upcoming threats? Which will not, this is not the first, and of course it will not be the last, and we're speaking about an escalation to terrorism threats. So if we are speaking about collective world measures, what could that be and in which way?
In my opinion, first of all, they have to appreciate what Egypt is doing now in the Sinai, in the peninsula of Sinai. We were paying a very difficult price in Sinai. People are dying, victims are falling, but in the same time, our people, our army, our police force is paying this price and sacrificing. Martyrs are falling. All this is not only for the security of Egypt, it is for the security of the Middle East region, and therefore it is depriving the scourge of terrorism from some of its potential in Egypt. Then in the Western Europe, all over the world, America also included, first of all, we should share what we know about the information about this thing. You see, yes. We have to involve the Interpol, the International Police Organization, in these things. We have to share also the lists of terrorists, because the United Nations now has a very, very detailed list of terrorists all over the world, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Southern Asia, and also in the Middle East and in Africa. The United States must have all the lists. Well, if you do these things, well, the United States is not immune from this thing, because first of all, the United States was the first who suffered the scourge of terrorism in the opening of this century, as you know, in the Trade Center. You see.
Yes, I see. I can see that they were the first to suffer. For speaking about exactly situation now, when we saw what happened in France, and we are speaking about. As we said, France, the land of liberty, but also we have seen the measures taken right after those brutal attacks. We're speaking about harsh security measures. We're speaking about the army on the lands, commandos on the lands, very severe precautionary measures taken on the ground.
Good.
So how about this to be understood of what is going on in Egypt and other Middle East countries?
That's a very intelligent question. They have to appreciate the situation in which we live and suffer these days. Sometimes we don't feel safe because we have other people who are inside our society, and they act as if they are the enemies of our society, okay? Well, and then if we take some measures, if the army takes some measures here or there, if we try to save ourselves, our children, our generation from these things, we hear about human rights. We hear about that the Egyptian government is not so democratic. You know these things. They have to appreciate. We don't blame them. We don't blame Monsieur Hollande when he took all these coercive measures, you see, because the situation imposes these measures, make them very imperative. I think we are living the same situation 2-3 years ago. From now, and 2 years in the past, you see, we have been living this situation and they are blaming us. We will not blame them, you see. We'll be so maybe generous and understanding. We will not blame them, but we encourage them to take these measures, you see, but they don't have to mix the scourge of terrorism by Daesh, for example, and mix it with the image of Muslims, either in France or in Europe or over the world. The ordinary Muslim, like any other human being in the world, is a peaceful, cooperative, a loving person, and Daesh is trying to distort the image of Muslims all over the world. This is our effort. We have to emphasize either in education, in our culture, in our behavior, that we are human beings first of all.
Very much indeed, Mr. Mohammed. If you look around, you will see all the attacks that are occurring right now, whether hitting the Middle East or hitting outside, are committed by the so-called Islamists, because we don't call them real Islamists. But it's not that. It's really not this, and terrorism has to be very much analyzed. But let me hear, before we start analyzing this phenomena very well, let me first go to an important summit that took place in Riyadh that has already tackled several aspects that are creating the conducive atmosphere for terrorism to much escalate. Let's watch the 4th Arab Latin or Arab South America's countries summit report, and we'll come back for discussion.
Fourth Arab South America Summit concluded on Wednesday with issuing the Riyadh Declaration. The declaration reiterated the importance of preserving sovereignty and independence of Syria and the need to end the Syrian conflict peacefully. The declaration also called on all Yemeni factions to respect resolutions issued during National Dialogue Conference held under the initiative of the Gulf Cooperation Council, as well as all UN relevant resolutions. The declaration also called for signing agreements of free trade between Arab and Latin American countries to avoid double taxations and encourage investment. In his speech before this summit, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi warned that a number of states in the region face the threat of disintegration as a result of extremism. The president stressed that combating terrorism should not only include security and military confrontations, but they should be dealt with an integrated vision that includes economic, cultural, and educational dimensions, as well as empowering youth and mobilizing their capabilities. President el-Sisi called for broadening cooperation between the two regions in order to achieve prosperity for their peoples in the light of opportunities and potentials both regions own in all fields. In this respect, the head of state called for increasing trade and investments between Arab and Latin American nations. President El-Sisi said Egypt was looking forward to communicating with Latin American countries in order to inform them of promising investment opportunities. He expressed hope that Latin American nations would support Arab causes, referring to the significance of ending the Israeli occupation and the declaration of a Palestinian state on a two-state solution in order to stabilize the Middle East. The two-day summit started on Tuesday with the aim of strengthening ties between the geographically distant but economically powerful regions. The summit was first held in 2005.
Of course, this was an important summit that took place between two important regions, the Latin American one and, of course, the Middle East region. And we're speaking about Arab countries who were meeting for the fourth time with the Latin American. It has its of course, economic dimensions, and it has its own political dimensions. But in the Arab affairs, we're taking from what concerns us, the Arab affairs aspects, and what came out of this summit regarding that. Back to you, Mr. Mohammed Khouli, and of course the outcome of this important meeting were several announcements or several points in a communique, in a final communique, that were, if we can say, amicable solutions towards several issues. For speaking about the Palestinian cause, Syria, Yemen, Libya, and how did you view the significance of this summit in the first place?
First of all, if you look at our cases, our questions, our problems in the Middle East, the Palestinian question, the Syrian problem, Iraq, and these things, well, we cannot solve these problems just with us and only also with the Latin American countries. The most practical thing is the arena of development. We can share this with these people, our efforts for development. You see, I mean the economic side in particular, which, as you know, on the masses of the people. It was not a coincidence that the idea of this conference and this gathering between the Latin American people, and it was in 2005.
Yes,
you see, 20th of Feb, and it was initiated by a president. I'm an admirer of him until now, President Lula da Silva. You see, yes. This man was concerned with the masses, with the people, with the poor people in his country, Brazil, and therefore he initiated this, and it is now, as you know, it's going on until now. So I think the most practical thing, and in order to have some practical fruits of these gatherings, it should reflect on the people. Well, the politicians can do a lot of things, you see, but you cannot solve the problem of Palestine, for example, just between the Arabs and the Latin Americans. You have to share with Latin Americans our common aspirations for development, for a better life. And you can even emulate, you can learn the lessons of the development in Brazil itself. Mr. De Lula and even Mrs. Rostif, his successor, although now she has a lot of problems, but these people try to do a lot of things in order to elevate their people from the poverty thing.
Yes, and they were even in worse situation than what we are witnessing.
Yes, that's our hope.
Very much indeed.
That's the hope.
But if we turn to the political aspect, why the political aspect? Because it is important for us to also discuss important factors that are really distracting the Middle East. And if we speak for an instant about the Palestinian cause, let me here put a positive note here on a European decision to tag
Yes.
the goods that are important from the West Bank, rather
From the settlements, the Israeli settlements.
Exactly, from the Israeli settlements in the West, or on the Palestinian occupied lands, tagging it as those are coming from the Israeli settlements in the Palestinian
territories.
Yes, and that is a very positive move that we have to salute the Europeans for such.
And let us say, we have to salute some Arabs, especially students, ladies, girls and the boys, you see, young men, who, I know that, who are still exerting efforts, a lot of efforts in order to persuade and to try to illuminate the minds of the Europeans about all these things. Some Europeans do not know what do you mean by occupied Palestinian territories. You have to let them understand this thing. Let me tell you something. South America, maybe let's have 80% of the countries of South America are with the rights of the Arabs and Palestinians. They are pro the Palestinian question. A lot of reasons for that. And this is demonstrated in the voting behavior in the United Nations, in the General Assembly. You see, all our questions are being voted for,
in favor,
in favor through the majority. We add to the majority the votes of the Latin American countries. You see, in the same time, there is something in the Latin American countries, especially Brazil, Argentina, is a kind of a positive diaspora of a lot of Arab refugees and Arab immigrants, especially from the Levant, Lebanon and Syria and Palestine, to these places, and they have been so active there, so positive there.
Let's not forget the former president of Argentina, who had the Lebanese...
Carlos
Menem. Exactly.
I have been following this, and I visited Brazil, and I went to the Amazon area, you see, and I saw the feelings, people's feelings towards our problems and our questions.
Exactly, and this is I started with the Palestinian cause, but it's not the only. Yes, it is the first one that has caused uproar among the Middle East and the people, but it's also what's going on in Syria, Libya, Yemen, and the whole Middle East. We're speaking about countries that are not anymore countries, that we cannot speak about them anymore as sovereign, integral countries. So we are speaking about a very conducive atmosphere for creating terrorism, which now is a threat to the globe.
I understand.
Yes. So from your point of view, how, again, reiterating the issue of terrorism, which was very much included in the summits of the or the Arab South American summit, exactly how can, for an instance, the Arabs and the Latin Americas countries who share the same feelings, the same morals, and many others, how can we at least collaborate or cooperate within this domain?
As I told you, if you collaborate only on the political arena or political front, it's good, but it's not enough.
Yes.
And it's not so practical.
Yes.
In my opinion, the so practical thing is you collaborate on the economic and developmental front, you see. And it is at the same time. Yesterday, let's say, and 1 week ago, the Mr. Nabil Al-Arabi, the Arab League Secretary General, had a declaration. It is very promising because it's based on some statistics. He said that the mutual trade between South America and the Arab world in general in 2005, and when this conference started, you see, it was just 6 billions. It's now in 2013. 14. It became it became 30 billions. Yes. This is so promising, you see, and if it's logically that we benefit a lot from this raise and from this increase in our mutual trade between them. And this reflects positively on our ability to aid, to help our brothers in, say, in Syria and whatever, you see, to try to wipe out the evil factors in their country, and to try to stand and resist the terrorism, which is, of course, which is defeating some developmental goals which the people are in need of. And we can help our people in Yemen, our people in Iraq. Anyway, so if you go ahead in this cooperation between Latin America and between, I think this is a good front which can give you some impetus in order to stand and resist and try to develop these places and to preserve the establishment, the, let's say, the state, l'État-nation, the nation state, the nation state in these places, you see, because the nation, if the nation state is destroyed, now we come to chaos in these countries. And that's in Yemen, for example. If you try to give the Yemenis more and more aid to re-establish their society, you can succeed in trying to wipe out the internal strife inside Yemen. The same thing in Syria, the same thing maybe in Iraq, and even in a country like Sudan, for example. By the way, the minister, the representative of Sudan in this conference, in the Riyadh conference, was so open, and he said, please come and try to invest in the Sudan, in our country. We have two essential things, vital things for investment. We have the land, we have the water. Come and try to invest. I think this call, which is so, direct, and maybe naive, let's say, but at the same time, it is so authentic. If the people in Latin America come and try to invest like China is doing now in Africa, I think will benefit, mutual benefit for the two parties, the South Americans, Arab world.
Yes, at least we can really be assured that those are coming very sincerely with no...
They have a lot of affinities with us, even in emotionally speaking.
Yes.
They think like us, you see. Their traditions, they have the legacy, a very bitter legacy like us, of imperialism. They were occupied by Spanish imperialism. We were also under the yoke of Ottoman, Turkish imperialism, and then English, British, and French imperialism. We share a lot of things, and they can come. They don't have any imperialistic desires to occupy us or to exploit us, but we can share, you see, we can establish a partnership, economic, developmental partnership with them.
Yes, that's a very hopeful, I guess, thinking and thoughts, and we really need this kind of positive atmosphere. But unfortunately, today's atmosphere is not
yes,
the very
I understand. I feel it.
If I may get back to terrorism, because it was an important component of this summit, and let me here take a quick analysis to this phenomena, terrorism. Terrorism is not or did not occur yesterday or 3-4 years ago. No, that terrorism has been there for decades. And if I may quote the U.S. State Secretary, or the former U.S. State Secretary, Mrs. Clinton, while speaking that the United States, for its own interests, created some bases of those very important bases of terrorism. If we're speaking about Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who she declared that he was a agent, and then they lost control over him when he went there. She declared that in this investigation, or this Libya probe they're making in the Congress. Terrorism terrorism is an important phenomenon. Now, from your point of view, how the world are confronting terrorism, if we're speaking about the United States efforts and if we're speaking about other global efforts, how do you view the situation?
As I told you, the terrorism scourge or disaster, whatever, or the waves of terrorism, it is not, as you said, it is not new. In the second half of the 20th century, maybe in the last third of the 20th century, we witnessed a lot of terrorist trends and terrorist groups. We started with Baader-Meinhof terrorism in Germany, with the Red Phalanx in Italy. Even this Red Italy, they kidnapped the Prime Minister of Italy and killed him. It's not only something of a cinema or a movie or something like that. It was so violent, you see. We had the Red Army in Japan and other things, you see.
Basque in Spain and...
Yes. Well, the Basque people are trying to, they have a national...
Separatist.
They have a national call and national goal. But when people heard about this, we didn't say the Germans are terrorists, nor the Italians are terrorists, or the Japanese are terrorists. People were differentiating and discriminating between, or separating between, the terrorist groups and the terrorist trends and the people themselves, you see. But our problem now, as Arabs and Muslims, that people are mixing things, you see. This is the media, because in the period on which I was talking about, the last third of the 20th century, there was no media revolution or electronic revolution. But now we have the revolution, the explosion of media, of the electronic revolution. So people are consuming billions and billions of bits of information all over the world, not through the media, the formal media, but through, as you know, the social media among the people. And this is our problem, and this is our challenge. And therefore, this is our problem now, is to try to tell people, the people in the world, that we as Muslims, and Egyptians, Muslims and Christians, Muslims all over the world, we are terrorists. You see, we are loving people who love peace. We want to live in peace. We want to cooperate and these things. But in the same time, inside our countries, we have to exert a lot of efforts in order to, let's say, save our creed, our religion from terroristic interpretations, from backwarded handling. You see, we should be very brave and daring and facing these elements who in our religion, especially Islam, according to the Middle Ages, let's say, or before the Middle Ages.
Let me here take a break with this report, and it is very much relevant to what you were saying here. President Sisi himself went to Sharm el-Sheikh in order to give this gesture that we are welcoming the tourists in Egypt. Nothing will break us, that we are always and will always promote for Egypt. And that was 2-3 days right after the Russian plane crash, in which, of course, the Russians were killed in such attack that we don't know yet its results. Let's watch this report and we'll come back for discussion.
To the City of Peace and Tourism and Unity of Egyptians, a peace rally arrived in Sharm el-Sheikh, including politicians, writers, actors and sports figures, to push tourism in the city, conveying a message to the world that the city is safe. Earlier, addressing local media during his visit to Sharm el-Sheikh airport, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said security measures were boosted in all Egyptian airports in the past months. El-Sisi arrived in Sharm el-Sheikh International Airport, coming from Riyadh after attending the Arab Latin America Summit. The president said that no one can undermine the country as long as the Egyptians are united. Germany's flights from and to Sharm el-Sheikh continue as Egypt's ambassador to Germany, Badr Abdelati, held a press conference to promote for Egyptian tourism, underscoring that Egypt is a safe destination for tourism. This came as the International Civil Aviation Organization inspected the security measures of the Cairo airport, as inspectors hailed the standards implemented by Cairo airport, which cope with international ones. In another development, the World Tourism Organization urged the international community to pool its resources to protect travel against terrorism fears that have devastated the industry in Tunisia and Egypt. On the opening day of the conference on tourism in Tunis, WTO Secretary General Fa'i said the entire international community has the responsibility to help and support.
Right, as you've seen here, the Egyptian efforts, collective efforts to promote for Egypt in the first place before promoting for anything else. Yes, we're welcoming tourists from all the world. We are in solidarity with the whole world terrorism. But anyway, let's get back to what we were speaking about. And Mr. Khouli, if we are speaking about the on the sidelines meeting between President Sisi and King Salman and the Saudi-Egyptian relations, particularly after they agreed this council to oversee the Cairo Declaration. Please.
First of all, the positive result here is that Mr. Sisi's visit to Saudi Arabia, let alone the welcome which he received from King Salman and the other royal family and other officials, I think it was a kind of an answer, a very sophisticated, convincing, and also, let's say, dignified answer about the rumors which talked about a kind of a dispute, a kind of a rift between Cairo and Riyadh. That's the first thing. The second thing is the Cairo Declaration, which, let's say, materialized the aspirations of in cooperation between the two entities in Saudi Arabia and in Cairo. And both parties, this is very important. If the cooperation can be successful, it should be built on mutual interest. And the two parties, in my opinion, need each other. So Saudi Arabia has something to offer, and Egypt surely has a lot of things to offer in the same time, you see. And therefore, these are two forces which are now, in my opinion, pivotal forces in the Middle East and in the Arab world. And if these pivotal, forces, they can be partners in our development agenda, in our political agenda, in our reconciliation agenda, as far as Libya is concerned, Syria is concerned, and also in Yemen, as far as Yemen is concerned. So I look at this thing through a kind of a much more optimistic perspective. That's one. To Mr. Sisi's visit to Sharm el-Sheikh, on his return, you see, it was, let's say, it was a nice touch. It was a touch.
Yes, it's a good gesture,
yes. It's not a big agenda, but it was a touch to reassure people that, well, I'm here, the president is here, there is no measures, very harsh measures. We are not mobilizing a special force to guard and protect the president. He is here. He is amidst the people. He is playing with the children, as I saw in the pictures. These things, these humanistic touches, I think they serve in part to reassure people about what's going on. Because if you read, and I think you read, the international media, you see, especially in Western Europe, I think you feel that Egypt is a hell You see?
Yes. Unfortunately, this is
yes,
the picture they're
yeah.
giving.
You cannot answer these things just through our media. You have to answer these things and to rebuff them through actions.
Exactly.
And what the president did is a bit of action, which is reassuring in the last analysis.
Yes, I guess that would end our episode here. Yes, actions, and actions should be indeed be what we come out with in this upcoming stage. Mr. Mohammed Al-Khouli, political analyst and international media expert, we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next Saturday, another Arab Affairs.